Hi, welcome to today's broadcast on the emerging identity security perimeter. My name is Mike Giannotti, and I'm hosting today's session. And today we're going to be joined by Amir Gabrieli, who's going to be talking to us about this important topic. During the webcast, if you have any questions, if you look down below the slide and video, you will see we have a Q&A panel. I'll be monitoring that, and so you'll be able to post questions, ask me different things, and I'll go ahead and serve those up to Amir. But without further ado, let's go ahead and switch over to Amir Gabrieli.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you all today for joining us for this webcast. Thank you for your time. Today is going to be our first security discussion, webcast if you want, out of a series of 3 webcasts about Microsoft's strategic approach to security. Today's topic is very special. It's kind of an emerging topic in the industry, and this is the emerging identity security perimeter. The new identity security perimeter is a new security perimeter that you can build around the boundaries of your enterprise that enables secure access to services and to data outside of the firewall, and that can extend security beyond the traditional boundaries of the network security perimeter. So my name is Amir Gabrieli. I'm a security specialist with Microsoft. I actually joined Microsoft only 2 years ago with an acquisition of a company called Secure Island. So I'm coming from the security space into Microsoft, and I'm very excited and proud to be part of Microsoft security organization and promoting modern security strategies and approaches. So let's quickly review the agenda for today. We'll try to keep it short, really high level today, just to give you the high level of the security and how we can help you facilitate one if you're interested in that. Because today is our first session in a series of 3 discussions, I do want to take one step back and maybe say a few words about Microsoft's high-level approach to security, what drives Microsoft to invest in security, and how we structure our portfolio. Then I'm going to talk about the identity perimeter itself, what use cases can benefit from having an identity security perimeter, how you can architect and what is the architecture of the identity perimeter, at least based on Microsoft interpretation. And we're going to finish by understanding how you can build your own secure identity perimeter to support your own digital transformation, cloud adoption, and mobility with Microsoft technology. And we'll have enough time for Q&A at the end of the session today. So let's start. Let's start with talking about a little bit about Microsoft and security. So Microsoft is not your traditional security vendor, right? We are not Cisco, we are not Symantec, not McAfee, not Checkpoint. Microsoft business is not security. Microsoft business ties to the cloud, to digital transformation. We own Office 365, we own Azure, we support the digital transformation in the workspace environment and in the IT environment. And the reality in this business is that security can many times be an inhibitor. So many companies feel that they are not ready from a security perspective to go to the cloud, to increase their investment in cloud as a key facilitator of business functionalities, or go to identity as infrastructure as a service technologies. There's a lot of security concern that some organizations feel that they are not ready to go through that transition. So Microsoft investment in security is to provide a security framework to those companies that will allow them to transition to the cloud, to adopt digital transformation, to become borderless, to adopt mobility without compromising security. Right? We want to help our customers to adopt digital transformation in order to improve their business. Now, you'll be surprised that Microsoft investment in security doesn't fall short from the biggest security vendors today in the industry. And the way that we structure our investment in security is around 3 main security pillars. The first pillar is identity and access management. It's all about managing cloud identities, managing access management in the cloud. securing the cloud. It's really about building the identity security perimeter, and that's going to be the focus of today's discussion. The second pillar is information protection, and this is all about modern strategies to protect sensitive data at the internet scale in a borderless reality, in the cloud if you want. And here you'll also find advanced concepts like persistent data classification, secure collaboration, cloud DLP, data-centric encryption, and how all of them work together to build a framework that will help you to take control and secure your data in a borderless reality. A very interesting session that will happen on May 2nd or 3rd, I think. The third pillar, and from my perspective, the most interesting one, is threat protection and management. Now, in the threat protection and management security pillar, it's really, if you want, Microsoft response to the growing hostile IT environment that we see in the world today, and the need for security operation teams to scale against it, right? It's all about how Microsoft can empower your security operations, your SOC, with tools to help them protect, detect, response to cyber attacks and breaches, mostly associated with modern and sophisticated attacks, such as phishing attacks, compromised identities, zero-day exploits, fileless attack, in-memory attack, and this is across the entire Microsoft estate: cloud, on-prem, email, and identities. This topic will be covered on May 9th. So let's go back to the identity perimeter, and let's try to. So the identity security perimeter it's an industry concept that, again, is kind of a response that tries to address the inherent security gaps, the inherent security risks that are associated with digital transformation in the workspace environment. And let's break it down. It's very simple, to be honest. The reality today that businesses want to adopt digital transformation in order to improve their mobility, improve the business, make everything more accessible, and unlock all kind of blockers. And in order to do that, there are, for example, are pushing IT to adopt more cloud services. So the business want to move more business critical application to the cloud, maybe use third-party cloud solutions for that. So there's a huge pressure on IT to adopt more cloud application, but also to unlock productivity by enabling anywhere access. So users from anywhere should be able to access to those cloud services. Basically, the business is pushing IT to support a borderless IT environment where access to services and data is happening outside the firewall, outside of the IT assets. And from a security perspective, this is very complicated because to use a traditional network perimeter security controls to protect that is very limited. And they're not really completely built to support that. I mean, you can theoretically VPN everything in, then proxy everything out. But this is a little bit, I would say, an anti-cloud pattern, because you basically add more bottlenecks to a cloud transaction, and you add more single points of failure. So there's an element of being an anti-cloud pattern. And even if you do that, you don't cover all the use cases. So the emerging security perimeter to enable this connectivity from IT managed assets and non-IT managed assets is currently considered to be the identity perimeter. And the identity perimeter is kind of a virtual perimeter, but it manifests when an identity is asking to access a service or data at the internet scale. This is where the identity perimeter manifests, and this is where we apply our security controls to allow or block access to services and data at the internet scale. So let's illustrate that. Once upon a time, we had a single LAN, and we knew how to protect it very well. We had firewalls, DLP, proxies, intrusion detection system. Everything outside of the LAN was considered unsafe. Everything in the LAN was considered safe. Those days changed very quickly. I would say about 12 years ago. companies are trying to figure out how to allow users to work from home and how to start using business cloud services, enterprise scale, well protected, like Salesforce.com, Office 365, Box.com. And the immediate response was to basically extend the network security perimeter by adding network security perimeters around those assets. So we can use MDM or VPN or proxy or CASB for those critical business cloud applications. But that's not enough because the business wants more than that. What about our partners that operate completely outside of the LAN? We also want to give our partners access to services and data, our data. How can we maintain security if we share it with our partners? What about using more cloud applications? Not necessarily those major cloud applications that can be protected with a CASB. The business wants to use more cloud application and transition more services to the cloud and expect the security team to figure out how to protect that. And another emerging requirement is to use unmanaged devices. I mean, if the data is in the cloud, if the service is in the cloud, the endpoint is now only a Windows to the cloud. So now why not allowing access from any device, even unmanaged device, to act like the Windows to the cloud service and the data in the cloud? So all of those use cases are supported or covered by the identity perimeter. And in the identity perimeter, we pivot everything around a single, highly secure identity that is asking to access data and services anywhere. Okay, so we pivot everything around the secure, this single hybrid identity. The firewall, if you want, of the identity perimeter is called conditional access, and conditional access is where we develop very granular rules that define which identities can access which services under what conditions. This is a firewall that manage access management at the identity perimeter, and typically to protect data at the identity perimeter where you don't have network security controls, we like to use encryption. Why? Because data-centric encryption, it means that the files and the emails are encrypted, are protected, and this protected is independent of network or storage. You can put the file or the email anywhere, they're secured. Without a key, you won't be able to access the data. And the identity element here is that into the security, into the encryption envelope, you can embed the list of identities that you will be able to get a decryption key to access the data. From an architecture perspective, the way that we facilitate that, at least in Microsoft, is by leveraging cloud services. The main cloud service that open up this perimeter is Microsoft Azure AD, Microsoft Cloud Active Directory service, which I'm going to extend a little bit about later. This service enables cloud identities and enable cloud access management, but it doesn't work alone. With Azure AD, we have other cloud services that can extend identity-based security policies to other use cases. For example, RMS or Azure Information Protection can manage the encryption and the entitlement based on the identities in Azure AD. Intune, mobile managed application solutions that we have based on corporate identities, can create a virtual secure container on it's a virtual secure container to protect corporate data on any device, managed and completely unmanaged. And the CASB, leveraging the identities, can proxy new security policies to cloud services like Cloud DLP, managed sharing, so only specific identities should or will have access to specific set of files classification, for example, or threat management based on specific identities. So all of those additional use cases get the identities from the Azure AD and extend, add more layers of identity-based security to a borderless reality. Now, this discussion is supposed to be high level. I don't really want to go over all the technologies, but there are two technologies that I do want to spend a little bit time on because they are at the backbone of the identity perimeter. One of them is Azure AD. I'm sure that many of you out there are familiar with this technology, but for those of you who are not familiar with Azure AD, Azure AD is Microsoft Cloud Service for Cloud Access Management, and it works very much like the Windows Server Active Directory that you have in your network today. So in your network, in your LAN, many companies today have Windows Server Active Directory. It has identities, and it kind of broker access to services and to machines in your LAN. The Cloud Active Directory service more or less is doing the same thing, but in the cloud. It manages identities and it manages access to cloud services. Cloud services could be Office 365, could be all kind of SaaS application, AWS, Salesforce, ServiceNow, you name it. We currently have very out of the box support for almost 5,000 different cloud applications. Those cloud applications should support modern authentication, but modern authentication is a standard today in the market. So if you have cloud application, be assured that we can definitely broker access and manage identities for those services. Now, the way that it works in Microsoft, the Azure Active Directory synchronize identities with your Active Directory. So the same identities you have on in-prem are synchronized with the cloud service. And with that, we create a single hybrid identity to access services in a secure way in-prem and on-prem. So you can, from a single sign-on perspective, for example, you can log in from within your corporate to the internal HR system, and then once you log into salesforce.com, if you enabled, you can log in with the single sign-on option because you already have the token, you are authenticated, and Salesforce is in your virtual network. There's multiple benefits for having a cloud service as your access management for the cloud. First of all, it's reliable. The space in Gartner, at least, is called Identity as a Service. If you look at Gartner report, Microsoft is a leader in this space. We've been in this space for a long time now. So we have a highly reliable cloud solution, provide high availability, provide access from anywhere. So access for a cloud service can be from anywhere, from any country, from any device. It's not limited only to your LAN. And the good thing that even if your data center crashes, let's say that something happened in your data center crashes, users can still, through our cloud service, get access to your cloud business application. All right, so this is a high availability and one of the key advantages of using a cloud service to manage access in the cloud. There's some other benefits. I'm not going to talk about the Azure Active Directory today, but from a security perspective, because Azure Active Directory broker access to those cloud services, it's where we want to put our security controls that govern access, that define which users can access a service and under what condition, and we call that conditional access. Conditional access is, I like to talk about it like as a firewall of the identity perimeter, but today is an imperative. I'm surprised sometimes that so many customers already own conditional access, but they're not using it. It's an I would say, a critical functionality to protect your cloud assets. Now, the way that it works, as part of the authentication process, users are asking to get access to a service that could be Office 365 or any other cloud service or even internal service. They'll go through our access management solution and they'll need to go through conditional access policies. In a conditional access policy, we'll check multiple things. We'll check for the request original location. So where this request is coming from, what geographical location. Is it coming from within the LAN, outside of the LAN, outside of the USA, from a different country? So we'll take that into consideration. We'll check the device. Is it a domain joined device that is asking to access a service? Is it a managed device, managed mobile device? Does the device have a certificate, or maybe it's completely unmanaged device? We'll check the user, which properties this user has, which groups it belongs to before we'll allow access. And we can even check the ad hoc risk that is associated with the request. We have intelligence, and if our intelligence tells that there's something suspicious about this request, we'll know about that. For example, if the user is already logged in from a different country, and now a call is coming from another country, that may suggest that there's some level of risk with this request, and we can take that into consideration in our access policy. Now, the actions that we can take as part of the user trying to access a service, we can obviously allow access, we can block access, but we have two other options. The first option is to enforce multi-factor authentication. So under some level of risk, we may ask the user to provide another authentication and another strong authentication, right? Typically, user its mobile device. And we'll do that if we think that something, there's some element of risk. So for example, if a user is trying to access Office 365 from a different country and he typically doesn't do that, then we might challenge him with MFA just to make sure that he is who he claims to be, and also to prevent credential theft or attacks with stolen credentials. That's one option. The second option is called limited access. It's relatively new. Limited access is when we authenticated the user. We're sure that we know that the user who he claims to be, but we're not so sure about the end device. Then with limited access, we can allow access to the service with limitation. A typical limitation is no download to the device. So the device only allow web browser to the service, but you cannot download anything to the device. The device is only a window. That's a limited session. All of them are available today for you to manage control in the identity perimeter. Another technology that is worth mentioning is called Azure Information Protection.
Amir?
Yep.
Before you start that, we did have one question about Azure Active Directory.
Absolutely.
And they asked, they've heard there's more than one version of Azure Active Directory, free, basic, P1, P2. And they asked, how do these help form this identity perimeter?
Well, the basic capabilities you gain with the P1 license, and you get some advanced security control with P2. This discussion today is not about licenses. It's a completely pure technical, strategic discussions. If you do want to understand what you have now, what you can do with what you have now, or what is a roadmap for you or for us, I suggest you talk with your account executive and ask for a security workshop. In a security workshop, me or one of my peers will join your team. We'll figure out what existing investment you have in security from other vendors, what kind of licenses you have now with Microsoft, what are your security gaps, where you want to be, and we can strategize with you together how you can benefit from your existing investment in Microsoft with respect to other technologies that you already have, and how we can fit into your roadmap. Right, that's the way to go about it. I don't want to get into a licensing discussion now because it will never end.
Sure, and I went ahead and I posted just for everybody's, so they know, I went ahead and posted a link to the licensing breakdown that then breaks out the features they might be looking for.
Thank you, Mike.
Huh?
So any more questions? Or?
No, that's it.
All right, so let's talk about Azure Information Protection, another very powerful security controls that allow users to collaborate sensitive content with other users over an or non-secured environment, right? And the way that you do that is by using data-centric encryption, where the entitlement to access the document are embedded into the secured encrypted document as well. So how does it work? Let's say I am user A, I have a sensitive document that I need to share with multiple people from my organization and some other organization, and I know that I need to collaborate in a hostile environment, so I will use AAP to encrypt the document. And also in the encryption envelope, I'll state which identities from my dictionary or from other dictionaries will have access to the document. The document is now encrypted, and I can deliver it any way I want. I don't need to, the transit, it doesn't really, it's not a consideration. I can deliver it to a USB thumb drive, over email, on a hosting website, whatever. The document is encrypted from the recipient side, where they double click the file in a seamless, transparent way. We will try to authenticate the user that tries to open the document with the Azure Active Directory. If the user is authenticated, then AAP will check the entitlement list for that specific document, and if the user is entitled to open the document, he'll get a decryption key, and magically the document will open in his environment, and he can work with the document. When he saves the document, the encryption stays. So the nice thing is that as an organization, we can now extend our security controls to sensitive documents even beyond our boundaries when we participate in a B2B relationship, for example. So it's a very powerful mean to secure sensitive information in a hostile environment. So we go to the last, I would say, part of the discussion today is where I'm going to we're going to do a breakdown for you of how you can build your own identity security perimeter with Microsoft technology. But before I'll do that, I'll stop here for a few minutes and I'll ask Mike again if we have any interesting questions. That
we have no additional, but I'd encourage folks go ahead and post those, and
I'll give you a few minutes.
I'll feed that up to you. Yep. So why don't you go ahead, and then I'll pull those together.
All right. All right. So let's continue. So, as I mentioned, what I want to talk to you about now is how you can create your own layered security framework to build your own secure identity perimeter to to basically protect your mobile adoption, your cloud adoption, and your own digital transformation journey. And this security framework spans across identities, devices, data, and application, mostly for transactions that are outside of the firewall. Let's start with identity. So in the cloud, in the borderless reality, the only thing that stands between the bad guys and your services is the identity. Once an identity was breached, once someone stole a password, they can go to your services through the front door and you won't even know about it. And it's not so surprising that 85% of the breaches today start with an identity theft, with a compromised identity. And the attackers are very much actively trying to steal identities, for example, using phishing attacks, internal threats, and many other social engineering, you name it. Understanding that and being a leader in the identity space, Microsoft is heavily invested in creating multiple security layers on top of the identities to prevent such attacks. So let's review Microsoft investment in protecting your hybrid identities. The first investment, and we talked about it, it's really Azure AD, and this is an enabler for a single highly secure identity for a hybrid environment. It creates this single secure identity, enable a single sign-on. From a security perspective, you'll have one place to define your password policy for the identity, so you can choose what level of strictness you want to have for this password policy. Multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is another imperative for today's today's reality. Multi-factor authentication is the #1 protection against compromised identities. Microsoft has its own multi-factor authentication solution, but we can also integrate with third-party multi-factor authentication. Again, this is an imperative, and if you haven't yet enabled multi-factor authentication for your organization, I strongly advise you do that. This could block so many attacks. Conditional access.
I was going to say we have two questions, if you'd like them. So the first was, how important to rate the use of controlling IDM for cloud application as a risk factor by implementing SAML or LDAP LDAP-S as opposed to allowing the cloud application to use local IDM, MFA, and IP restrictions. I know that's kind of in the weeds, but that was the first question we had. Mm-hmm. And the second was, how can we protect non-office document types?
Non-office document. Two good questions. The first one is pretty complicated, and I want to apologize in advance. I don't think I have the time to address it in today's short session. But I encourage you to send this question as an email to me or to Mike, and we'll make sure that you'll get an answer for that. For the second question, Azure Information Protection can protect any file type. So it's definitely not limited to Office documents. I know that there is a buzz in the industry that we can only protect Microsoft files, but this is far from being correct. We can protect any file type. You can take a zip file. Sorry.
I was going to say, in the Q&A panel, I'll go ahead and post the email so that they can email you that.
Yeah, there's just for the person that asked about protecting other file types, just Google or Bing, sorry.
Bing
it. Supported files for Azure Information Protection, and you'll get a list and explanation of how we can protect any file type. So let's continue. Conditional access, another critical security layer on top of the identity and access management solution. We talked about conditional access. I don't have anything else to add here except to talk a little bit about the interesting combination between conditional access and multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication can sometimes be disruptive. Okay, users hate to constantly use a second factor. With conditional access, you can make multi-factor authentication dynamic and only activate it when you really need it, when there is really a risk, right? If a conditional access policy finds that there's no risk, the user is accessing from a domain-joined device from within the LAN, then I don't need to use second factor authentication. We'll skip this phase. However, if the user is accessing from an unmanaged device but is authenticated user, then maybe we'll challenge him with MFA. Or if this user is authenticated but is calling from outside of the USA and is typically not outside of the USA, maybe we'll challenge with MFA. So making multi-factor authentication dynamically, make it much more user-friendly and acceptable by the business. And again, multi-factor authentication is the #1 protection today against compromised identities. Another critical functionality is called just-in-time privilege role activation. And this is a security layer that we have only to a specific segment of the users, to privileged users. Now, I want you to think for a second what happens if an attacker or some bad organization steals the password of your domain admin, or steal the password of your Exchange Online admin. This is a huge problem because they can go inside through the front door, create backdoors in your environment, forward all the executive emails to a source outside of your organization, impersonate any person he wants in the organization. This is really bad. So understanding the sensitivity of those privileged users, Microsoft introduced a technology called just-in-time activation, where once you activate this feature, when those privileged users access Office 365, they access as normal users, right? They can read emails, they can work with documents, but they can't make changes in the environment. In order to be able to make change the configuration of the environment, they'll need to activate the privileges that they are eligible for. In order to do that, they'll need to go to a specific location and provide a justification and ask to activate those privileged users. During this process, they'll be challenged with another factor. They'll be asked to provide another factor, two-factor authentication. Again, this is an imperative for any cloud users to have additional layer of protection for your privileged users. Now, Microsoft investment in protecting your identities doesn't stop there, okay? Because regardless of all the security control that you may have to prevent an identity theft, it's impossible to prevent that completely. So Microsoft also takes an assume compromise approach. We leverage our cloud power, our machine learning that we have in the cloud, our user and entity behavioral analytics that we have on the cloud, and we'll constantly continue to monitor all of your identities behavior in the cloud, on-prem, in order to find any indication of suspicious activity that might suggest that you've been breached with a compromised identity and you can take action against it. This is almost unique to Microsoft. And it happens on multiple layers. The first layer is called compromised credential, and this is where we leverage Microsoft intelligence and third-party intelligence. And if our intelligence tells us that some of your identities, some of your users' passwords were offered to sell, for example, in the darknet, then those users are probably been compromised. We'll let you know about that, and you can create policies to immediately take action, like suspend those users, reset their password, or challenge them with MFA. So leveraging intelligence to look outside of Microsoft in the darknet and find indication of compromised identities and protect against that. Second is where we use our machine learning and entity and user behavioral analytics to find suspicious logins. So we constantly look at the user's login patterns, where the users are logging in from, and any suspicious activity around that will change the risk that is associated with the login and the user, and you'll be notified about that, and you'll be notified about that, and you'll be able to take action or take a policy, for example, reset a password or challenge with MFA. Some example for suspicious login activities. The very known one is called impossible travel. It's where we get 2 login requests in a short time from 2 remote geographical locations. If an identity was used for a brute force attack on a specific site, and now it's being used to access another site. That's again suspicious login pattern. There's 7 types of patterns that we're looking for, but very useful against compromised identities, and definitely you should consider that as part of your anti-phishing strategy. Malicious activity, we don't stop at the login, we even go one step further and we analyze the user activity on-prem in your network, which services they access at what time, which computer they're accessing and at what time, and also in the cloud, which services they're accessing in the cloud and what they're doing on those cloud services. For example, how many files they upload or download to the cloud in general, right, for this specific user profile. Any anomaly, any strange behavior, like a user is accessing a new machine that typically he doesn't access, will trigger an alert, and you can immediately take policy, and you can have a policy to take action immediately, like suspend the user, remove it, cancel the session, reset the password, or challenge with MFA. We didn't stop there, and we even added more identity protection at the endpoint, at the desktop. Why? Because desktop today are one of the key attack vectors. Many breaches started by attacking the endpoint, the desktop, and there is some exploits that are typically done by attackers, like pass the hash, pass the tickets, where they do it once they're in a machine, even if a low-level non-privileged user, they can do an in-memory attack to steal a ticket of in-memory attack on the desktop to steal the ticket of high privilege users. In order to protect against that, in Windows 10, we added multiple security controls. I don't have time to go over all the security controls in Windows 10, but that's a very interesting discussion. Generally speaking, comparing Windows 10 to any other Windows version from a security perspective is like comparing a tank to a private car. One of the features that we added in Windows 10 called Credential Guard, and is where we run all of those system processes that hold the tickets in a secure virtual machine inside the desktop itself. So even if your desktop was breached, it is immune against in-memory attack that can steal tickets of privileged users. So a lot of investment in the identity. Now, by the way, the structure of those slides that you see here on the left side, you see the name of the product that I use that can be used to facilitate the use cases. On the right side, I'll talk mostly about use cases. I'm not talking specifically on products. But if you want to know which products can help you facilitate those use cases, you have the list on the bottom left side of the slide. Let's talk about devices, mobile devices. So once you're already in the cloud, the business will push you to unlock productivity by enable anywhere access to the cloud from any mobile device, from any device, right? Microsoft provide multiple strategies to help you here. The first strategy, which is very known, it's almost a commodity today, called mobile device management, and it's really the ability to allow your users to onboard, to enroll their own devices under the corporate management. So we have an agent. The agent can make sure that the device is in compliance. When you log in with the device, we can check that the device is in compliance. We can install threat protection software on any device. And in case the device is stolen, we can do remote wipe. That's one strategy. Microsoft has its own solution. There's many other solutions in the market as well. Another interesting strategy is called mobile application management. I consider it a must-have today. In mobile application management, we move the security to the applications themselves. And this is the ability of mobile applications, the same mobile application that you download from the store. You don't need to install anything else. But those applications have the ability to create a virtual secure container to protect corporate data on any device, managed and also completely unmanaged, right? And this ties to the identity. Once we identify that the corporate identity is using this specific mobile application, we'll automatically behind the scene create the secure virtual container. I'll give you an example. Let's say that you go to your kid's tablet or your grandma iPad, you download Outlook mobile app. They can use it for their own email users. Once you log in with your corporate users, Outlook will recognize that it's part of a secure corporate. It will create automatically a secure virtual container in the device where everything you download will be encrypted and completely separated from the device at the clipboard level. You'll only be able to share data or copy and paste between secure application that have this mobile application management capability enabled for corporate identities. So complete separation from the other identities and the other application on the device should be definitely part of your bring your own device strategy, and that's part of Microsoft Endpoint DLP strategy. The next the last option I want to talk for mobile devices management is called limited session from untrusted devices, and I mentioned that earlier. In limited session is where we know that the user is authenticated, but we're not so happy about the device that the user is accessing from, right? Maybe it's a terminal in an airport, or maybe it's a device that is not managed. In this case, we can apply a limit session. We can inject a proxy to the session itself, and the proxy will block download and will only allow browser-based access. So from the browser, right, the user can access an online application, can see emails, can work with documents, but he will never be able to download those emails, the attachment, or the documents to the device. That's limited sessions that we can apply on untrusted devices. So those are different strategies that we have for mobile devices. Let me move to the next section, which is data. Storing and sharing data in a borderless reality requires most organizations that I know at least to become more mature with respect of how they handle sensitive data, right? To be very honest, I'm meeting a lot of CISOs, and if I'm going to ask him a simple question like, do you know where the sensitive data is? Typically I get the answer, no, I don't really know, right? So if you don't know where the sensitive data is, how can you protect it? And this is where Microsoft did a lot of investment in information protection technology. You can see here on the left side. And let's talk about some of the use cases of the functionality that we can give you. The first one is really the ability to discover, classify, and protect sensitive information. And we can do that for data in use and data at rest. For data in use, we have menu bars that augment our productivity environment, and they can work with the user to classify documents as the document is being created. So if someone is writing an email or someone is writing a document and we feel that this document is sensitive because it has PII or PCI, we'll ask him to classify the document as sensitive. The classification is persistent. We inject the classification tag to the file, to the email, and it goes with the file wherever the file goes. So other people that receive the same email or document, now they can see the classification and they can make better decision with the file. This can also impact your DLP technology. So regardless of your existing investment in DLP, all DLP technologies can search for this classification tag and be better with protecting classified data. So this is for data at rest. We also have automation where the system can advise the user how to classify the data through recommendation, sometimes enforcement. A user can manually decide to classify a document as they build up the document. We also have scanners, right? So we have on-prem scanners to scan your repository. We have cloud scanners to scan your cloud repository to find those sensitive documents that you haven't yet classified, check their content, and maybe classify them accordingly. So again, they're classified. When users open the document, they'll be able to see the classification of the documents, and the security ecosystem will be aware of the classification of the documents so they can handle them more effectively. So classification, I would say it's definitely on the table of most security organizations I'm talking to today. The other functionality that I want to talk, and I mentioned that before, is Azure Information Protection. Start using data-centric encryption to protect your data anyway. Unlock secure collaboration by protecting the data itself, not the transit, not the transport, not the channel. Encrypt the data, so now it's protected anywhere, regardless to network or storage. And of course, inside the encryption envelope, we have the access list, which defines which identities and the entitlements to access the document and the permissions that they'll have over the documents. So it really unlocks secure collaboration, internal, B2C, and B2B. And finally, it's to improve your overall DLP posture, just to provide kind of a consistent DLP across the stack. Most companies that I talk to today already have investment in DLP, McAfee, Semantic, you name it. They have DLP for the endpoint, DLP for the email, DLP for the cloud, you name DLP for the network. But each DLP work at the egress point separately doing content inspection. Once you have the file classified, they don't need to do that anymore. They can just look at the classification tag and do the action. So you take the heavy duty of figuring out what is classified and not classified to the moment the data is created, rather to do that at the egress point. Right? When it gets to the egress point, those documents should be already classified, and by that you improve and you also streamline the DLP across the stack. Another benefit here is that you incorporate user choice in the DLP framework. If an HR person is working on a new document and he decides that this document is sensitive, regardless of the content, content inspection won't help you here, but he tags the document as sensitive, everybody will know about it, other users and your DLP ecosystem. And the idea is really to reduce false positives, reduce false negatives, and improve the performance and the reliability of your DLP ecosystem. Protecting application behind the firewall, it's cloud application. Once you start using cloud application, you immediately lose control over the files that your users are uploading to the cloud, the sharing, who they share those files with, and what they're doing in the cloud, because cloud applications are not your applications. You have no control over that. The technology in the market to give you this control back is called the CASB, Cloud Access Security Broker. Microsoft acquired the CASB 2 years ago. It was named Adalom. Now we call it Microsoft Cloud App Security. And together with Azure Active Directory and Intune, it provides a security framework for cloud application outside of the firewall. Let's talk about some functionalities that are delivered with the CASB. The first functionality is Shadow IT. So, okay, you have the security, an identity security perimeter outside of your firewall, but still you don't want to allow access to all cloud applications. There's only a set of cloud applications that you want to allow your users access to. So Shadow IT is really dealing with the problem that most security organizations don't know really what cloud applications are being used by the business. Shadow IT is a technology that will give you visibility to the cloud application used by your users, and to enforce policies around that. That's it's a very important it's a very important topic to cover, Shadow IT. Taking control of which cloud application are being accessed by your users and visibility to that. Once you define which applications you want to grant access to, the second phase is to manage the access, and we talked about it. This is conditional access, so you can control which users will be able to access which services and under what condition, from what location, from what devices. And now that you have access to the service itself, it's all about getting visibility to the files in the service, in the cloud service, and who the files are shared with, and taking some control over what users are doing and can do in the cloud. This is where the CASB uses APIs to do discovery of the files in the different cloud, let you know who those files are shared with, and allow you to apply policies. So, for example, sensitive files will not be able to share with identities that are outside of your domain or outside of a specific group in your Active Directory. We also have user and entity behavioral analytics that we can do on the identities that are accessing the cloud services to find any indication of a suspicious activity that could be associated with a compromised identity. And as I mentioned earlier, we have session controls that we can inject to the session itself to block download of sensitive documents to the endpoint. So that's how we protect the endpoints. And this is more or less the last slide for today. So I went relatively very fast at a high level just to explain how you can build your own identity security perimeter. I want to say a few words now just to conclude the session. The identity perimeter is not a Microsoft concept. It's a market, it's an industry concept. It's not here to replace the network security perimeter, but to augment it and if you want, extend security to those use cases that cannot be accessed by the network security perimeter. And if you're interested in that, if you would like to learn more, as I mentioned earlier, please go to your account executive, ask for a security workshop. We'll come to your environment, or you'll come to our MTCs. We'll have an open discussion about your existing investment in security, your security gaps, your existing investment in Microsoft, which licenses you have, your roadmap, and we can strategize how Microsoft can help you meet your own cybersecurity goals. So with that, Mike, back to you with Q&As.
Yeah, so we had a question asking about if the three-part presentations will be available for on-demand viewing afterwards. And just to quickly answer that, yes. So this is being recorded as it's delivered. So the very second we finish this particular webcast, the original link that you used to get here will be available and people can watch on demand. In addition, we will be posting a archived version of this up to LinkedIn. So if you want to follow me or Amir, I'll provide the link for both of us on LinkedIn, and I'll just quickly repost so that you have those, our LinkedIn information. If you follow us on there, connect with us, you'll be able to see when that's actually posted out. So that was one question. And let me, clicked the wrong one. I had some people asking for your email to contact you for follow-up on some of the deep dive. And then the last one, but I think you covered it because it was around, in fact, you did right before you mentioned about the lower left-hand quadrant, showing the technologies that they would need for the solutions. Somebody had asked about other particular technologies we would need. So.
All right, feel free to post my email on the chat windows for those who want to do a follow-up.
I'll post that right now.
Microsoft threat management, information protection, security management, GDPR, Azure Active Directory, and again, you'll have it with the deck that we'll post. You'll have access to all of those resources. And Microsoft has a lot of documents, a lot of data, a lot of information in our website. So it's pretty much easy to learn independently about our technologies, about our strategies. And as following steps, if you want, I mentioned, if you are interested in having a deeper discussion, just ask your account executive for a security workshop. It's a security workshop are a standard for Microsoft. You're all geared to support that in order to work with you to figure out how we can help you meet your own goals. It's not a sales discussion. It's really very technical. And if you want to do a trial, you can very easily start a 30-day trial for Azure Active Directory. Just go to this link here. Azure Information Protection, which is a very easy and simple evaluation that you can do to start classify documents and apply encryption and DLP and secure collaboration. Our cloud solution, also an easy evaluation, cloud-based, no on-prem footprint, Microsoft Cloud App Security, and Microsoft Intune, MDM, and managed mobile application management, which is also very easy to evaluate and test. So thank you so much for your time today. I hope you enjoyed the session and it was relevant. And I look forward to talking to you in other sessions, in the next two sessions that we have.
Yeah, and just so people know, be on the lookout for announcements around those. We have right now slated for Wednesday, May 2nd, Protecting Sensitive Data in a Borderless World, and then on Wednesday, the 9th, Threat Management in Increasingly Hostile Environments. So we'll have announcements and invitations out shortly around those. I want to thank you, Amir, for being willing to come on today and spend some time with folks. And again, if you would like to connect with us, I've posted down below LinkedIn information. Amir's email is also there for you. And we look forward to hearing from you. And if you have requests for additional types of sessions around anything around the cloud, we would love to hear from you. So please connect with us on LinkedIn and let us know, and we'd be happy to connect. Any last words, Amir?
No, thank you all for your time, and thank you, Mike, for helping me with the webcast today.
Thank you, everybody. Take care, and as always, have a great day, and ciao.
Absolutely. Bye.